Matriarch Layla, silenced by trauma, was seen by her daughter-in-law Samira as nothing but a nuisance in the luxurious mansion of her son, Emir Karim. Far from the world's gaze, Samira wove a web of silent cruelty, turning her mother-in-law's life into a private hell. Little did she know that in the heart of that very home, seeds of distrust had already been sown. Karim's premonition wasn't a whisper, but a muffled scream echoing in the depths of his consciousness. Far away, amidst the skyscrapers of Dubai, the Emir felt the distance like an open wound, festering with every phone call. Video calls with his mother, once a sanctuary of affection and shared laughter, had become carefully orchestrated performances by Samira. Layla's eyes, once sparkling and full of life, now held an emptiness that no makeup could conceal. A forced smile adorned the matriarch's lips, but sorrow resided in her eyes, a silent truth that Samira, ever present and smiling, seemed to ignore, or worse, to celebrate. The decision to install cameras didn't stem from a sudden impulse, but from a slow and painful erosion of trust. Karim wasn't naive. His prolonged absence from home had allowed the darker shadows of human nature to flourish. Under the guise of a state-of-the-art security upgrade, a team of discreet technicians, absolutely loyal to Karim, swept through the mansion while Samira was on a short shopping trip in Paris. Tiny lenses were embedded in picture frames, decorative objects, and ventilation systems, transforming the luxurious residence into a secret stage. From his remote office, Karim felt his heart race as the surveillance network came to life, each vantage point a window into the soul of his home. The first few weeks were a slow torture. Karim watched scenes that made him clench his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms. These weren't grand acts of physical violence, but a more insidious cruelty, eroding Layla's dignity and the little peace she might still possess. A mother's favorite meal intentionally placed out of reach, a blanket removed on a cold night as the mansion's temperature dropped, a word whispered by Samira, inaudible to the cameras, yet provoking a startle of fear in Layla's eyes. With each image, Karim's anger grew, a silent fury burning beneath his skin. He watched Samira laugh, a soft, malicious sound, as Layla tried in vain to reach a book on the highest shelf, her fingers trembling in the air. With every scene, the Emir felt the air leave his lungs, a suffocating pressure in his chest. Samira's malice, however, had layers. Not content with daily torment, she began to attack the past. The memories Layla couldn't express, but surely held in her heart. The cameras recorded the daughter-in-law, forcing her mother-in-law to discard sentimental objects, small travel souvenirs, old photographs. Layla wept, tears silently streaming down her face as her trembling hands untied the knots of a lifetime. Samira watched, her eyes gleaming with sick satisfaction, her own video camera in hand, recording each act of desecration. One day, it was a bracelet Karim had given his mother as a child. On another, a small diary where Layla had recorded her son's first steps. Each loss was a blow, a violation of the sanctity of memory. Karim, thousands of miles away, felt each blow as if it struck his own chest, pain and powerlessness corroding him. Then came the night that would seal Samira's fate. A fierce storm swept through the city, lightning streaked the sky, and the rumble of thunder made the mansion tremble slightly. On Karim's monitor, the image of the living room appeared, bathed in the intermittent light of flashes. Layla sat on the floor, huddled, her shoulders shaking, her hair disheveled. Samira loomed over her, a sinister smile on her face, her own video camera raised and aimed at the scene with relentless focus. In Layla's fragile hands, Karim instantly recognized it. A crumpled drawing, faded by time, a childhood scribble he had made for his mother. A crooked house and a smiling son. It was one of his first gifts, a treasure Layla had kept for decades. Samira's hands guided Layla's, forcing them to tear the paper. A sharp, cruel, ripping sound cut through the heavy silence of Karim's office. Layla's tears streamed, a river of silent pain. Samira stepped back, the camera still filming, and with an air of triumph, turned it upon herself. A victorious and wicked smile spread across the daughter-in-law's face, the image of pure malice broadcast live. Karim, thousands of miles away, felt his blood boil. He could no longer bear it. The moment to act had arrived. The creak of Karim's office chair cut through the static air of his private study, a technological refuge hidden deep within the mansion itself. A few doors away, in the living room, Samira's charade was crumbling. His fists, once clenched with the force of weeks of suppressed anger, now opened and closed, eager for action. He could no longer be merely an observer. Rising, he felt his entire body vibrate with a cold, dangerous energy. His blood boiled, yet his expression remained impassive, a mask of steel forged by betrayal and pain. Outside, the storm roared with redoubled ferocity. A deafening thunderclap made the mansion walls vibrate, almost drowning out the sound of Karim's determined footsteps down the silent corridor. With each stride, the image of Samira's victorious smile, recorded in real time, also etched itself into his mind, fueling the torrent of fury that threatened to erupt. He made no sound. There were no keys, no creaking doors. The living room door was already ajar, inviting him into the scene of the crime. Samira was still there, her facial muscles contracted in perverse triumph, her lips curved in a smile that exulted in Layla's humiliation. Her own camera, the instrument of her cruelty, remained raised, filming the torn drawing and the matriarch's silent tears. She took a step back, absorbing the scene, reveling in the suffering she had inflicted. The flash of a distant lightning bolt illuminated the room for an instant, revealing the tableau of pain and sadism. It was at that exact moment, as Samira's smile widened into an expression of pure victory, that her eyes, lifting from her camera's monitor, caught something. A shadow on the threshold, a tall, imposing figure. The smile on Samira's lips froze, joy transformed into dread, an absolute terror that spread across her face like a dark stain. The blood seemed to drain from her veins. There, standing at the door, was Karim. His dark eyes, deep as abysses, burned with a glacial intensity that promised condemnation. There was no warmth, no forgiveness, only a cutting coldness that pierced her soul. The intermittent lightning reflected in his gaze, making it even more terrifying. A choked sob escaped Samira's lips, a small broken sound amidst the storm's roar. Her hands trembled, and the video camera, still filming what remained of the drawing, slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor with a dull thud. The crack of plastic breaking on marble echoed through the room, but Samira barely noticed. Her attention was entirely fixated on Karim, on his unwavering gaze. Her own reign of hatred, built in secret and darkness, had been unmasked on the stage of her own cruelty. Layla, huddled on the floor, felt the abrupt shift in the room's energy. She raised her eyes, moist and red, and saw her son. A mixture of shock, relief, and profound shame for her condition altered her facial expression. A fresh, heavy tear rolled down her cheek, but this time it wasn't solely from sadness. It was a tear of recognition, of shared pain. Karim didn't move from the doorway, but his voice, when it finally broke the heavy silence of the room, was a cutting whisper, more lethal than any shout. A low growl, almost inaudible beneath the rain's drumming against the windows. "So this is how you entertain my mother, Samira." The words struck Samira like a physical blow. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Her entire body trembled uncontrollably. "Karim, my love, I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her voice a mere thread, desperately trying to regain her composure. the pose of a devoted wife she had maintained for so long. Her eyes darted a brief, panicked glance at Layla, as if imploring her to confirm her lie. The emir took a step into the room, and the air seemed to grow heavier. His gaze fixed on the torn drawing on the floor, then on Samira's broken camera, and finally, back to her. "You don't know." His voice was even colder, laden with cutting sarcasm. "I saw, Samira. I saw everything, every humiliation, every tear, every piece of my past you forced her to destroy." He paused, and the silence that followed was filled only by the incessant rhythm of the rain. "I've been watching for a very long time." Karim's words vibrated in the room, punctuated by the clamor of the storm outside. Samira staggered backward, terrified, as if the air had suddenly abandoned her. Cold sweat beaded on her forehead, and her skin, once flushed with triumph, now took on a grayish hue. "No, Karim, please. This is a misunderstanding. She's sick, confused. I was only trying to help her organize things." Her voice rose in desperation, a futile attempt to regain control of the narrative. She pointed a trembling finger at Layla, a silent accusation of insanity. Karim took another step, closing the distance between them. His eyes never left Samira's, a gaze that pierced the soul. Sick? Confused? With each word, his tone grew colder, sharper. "I saw you smile, Samira. I saw the pleasure in your eyes as my mother wept. I saw you guiding her hands to destroy what I gave her." He stopped before the broken camera on the floor, nudging it lightly with the tip of his shoe. The sound of the storm seemed to intensify, a chorus for the revelation. "And not just tonight. I saw the denied meals, the blankets taken away on cold nights, the whispered words that terrorized her. You treated her like a prisoner, Samira, a prisoner in her own home." Layla, still huddled on the floor, watched the scene, her eyes wide. Fear was still there, but a spark of hope, of justice, began to glimmer in her gaze. She couldn't speak, but her silent presence was a powerful witness. Samira, breathless, backed away until she hit the wall. "You can't prove anything. These are the delusions of a sick old woman. She made it all up. I am your wife. Will you believe her or me?" Her desperation was palpable, but her voice still carried a note of defiance. A last attempt to cling to power. Karim let out a short, bitter laugh, a joyless sound that chilled Samira's blood. "I don't need her to say anything, Samira. I have eyes to see and ears to hear." He extended his hand, pointing to a small, gleaming spot on a picture frame on the opposite wall. The tiny lens aperture, invisible to the untrained eye, now seemed like an accusing eye staring at her. "Did you think I was naive, that I would leave my mother's safety to chance, especially with you around?" Samira's face paled even further. Understanding, cruel and undeniable, struck her. He knew he had proof, not just what she filmed, but everything. "Not only that, Samira," Karim continued, his voice maintaining a low, menacing tone. "Your own camera is also a witness. You filmed your own crime. Do you think I won't use it against you?" He turned to Layla, kneeling gently beside her. The storm outside seemed to recede for an instant, the thunder diminishing to a distant murmur. Delicately, he held his mother's trembling hand. His eyes, previously full of fury, softened as they met hers. "It's all right, Mother. I'm here now. No one will hurt you again." Tears welled in Layla's eyes again, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude. She squeezed her son's hand with surprising strength. Karim's gaze returned to Samira, and the warmth he had just shown Layla vanished, replaced by a cutting coldness. "You crossed a line, Samira, a line no wife, no person should ever cross." He stood, the shadow of his imposing figure falling over her. "This house is no longer your home. You will be escorted out immediately. Your belongings will be packed and sent wherever you wish, but you will not spend another night under the same roof as my mother." Samira opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. The shock was paralyzing. She would be cast out disgraced with the evidence of her cruelty against her. Her life of luxury, her position, everything crumbled before her eyes. The storm's roar seemed to mock her downfall. Karim took the intercom from his pocket. "Security," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. "Please come to the living room. We have a visitor who needs to be escorted off the property." He switched off the intercom and put it away. Samira's face was contorted in a mixture of fury and despair, her eyes gleaming with tears of impotent rage. The room, now lit only by the faint glow of the fixtures and the occasional flashes of lightning, resembled a somber courtroom. "What about the divorce, Karim?" she managed to whisper, her voice hoarse. "And my share. You can't just discard me." Karim stepped forward, his eyes fixed on hers. "I can, Samira, and I will. Every one of your acts was recorded. Your cruelty, your attempt to destroy my mother's sanity. You won't get a single penny of my fortune. On the contrary, you will face legal consequences for your conduct." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You thought you were deceiving me, that I was too far away to see. But I was closer than you imagined, and now you will reap what you've sown." The sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor. The door opened, and two burly security guards with serious expressions entered the room. They looked from Karim to Samira, then to Layla on the floor, understanding the gravity of the situation without a single word. Samira looked at the men, then at Karim, then at Layla. Her reign of terror had come to an end, not with a whisper, but with the storm's roar and the cold gaze of the man she had underestimated. The security guards, men of robust build and serious countenances, awaited Karim's instructions. Samira, still leaning against the wall, breathed with difficulty, her eyes fixed on the men, then on her husband. A choked sound escaped her throat, an attempt at a plea that was lost in the intensity of the moment. "Samira, you are being escorted off my property." Karim's voice was an undeniable command. "There is no negotiation. There is no appeal. You are an intruder here now." One of the security guards stepped forward, his presence imposing. Samira recoiled, as if the wall itself might swallow her. "You can't do this!" she shrieked, her voice shrill, laden with desperate fury. "I am your wife. I have rights." Karim remained impassive. "Your rights ended the moment you raised a hand against my mother, the moment you turned this house into a prison for her. You are no longer my wife, Samira. You are a criminal, and you will pay for every act." The second security guard approached her, reaching for Samira's arm. She flinched, but the men's strength was irrefutable. "Don't touch me. I'm not a criminal." She struggled, but her movements were weak and uncoordinated, tinged with hysteria. The sound of her protests echoed through the room, muffled only by the continuous murmur of the rain outside. "Take her," Karim ordered, without averting his gaze. "Ensure she takes nothing that doesn't belong to her. Her personal belongings will be sent to an address she indicates. Otherwise, they will be donated." Samira was dragged out of the room, her screams diminishing as she was led down the corridor. The sound of her heels clacking on the marble and her voice fading into the distance marked the end of her tyranny. The silence that followed was almost deafening, broken only by the soft rhythm of the rain against the windows and the sound of Karim's own breathing. He knelt again beside Layla, whose figure still trembled slightly. His mother raised her tear-filled eyes to him, and Karim saw in them not just the newly ceased fear, but also a profound vulnerability and an overwhelming relief. "Mother, it's all right now," he repeated, his voice softer than a whisper, almost a coo. With extreme care, Karim enveloped her in his arms, an embrace that was as much consolation as unspoken apology. Layla huddled against him, and he felt the fragility of her body. Her tears wet his shirt, but he didn't care. It was a cry of liberation. "I'm so sorry, Mother," he murmured, his voice choked with guilt. "I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner, for trusting someone I shouldn't have." He stroked her hair tenderly, feeling his mother's accelerated pulse. Layla couldn't respond with words, but her grip on Karim's shirt spoke volumes. It was a silent promise that the pain had been understood, that her son's presence was the balm she desperately needed. The terror, though still present in her memories, began to recede, overshadowed by the safety of her son's arms. Karim helped her to stand slowly, his movements cautious, as if Layla were made of crystal. She was still weak, the ordeal had taken its toll. "Let's take you to your room, Mother. You need to rest. I'll be by your side." He supported her, guiding her out of the living room, away from the scene of the confrontation, the torn drawing and the broken camera. Each step was slow and deliberate. He wanted to ensure she felt safe every moment. As he passed the door, he cast a final glance at the damage left behind, a vivid reminder of Samira's cruelty. The broken camera lay on the floor like a symbol of her own downfall, and the torn drawing, an open wound in Karim's past. The storm still hummed softly, but inside the mansion a new calm, tenuous and fragile, began to settle. In Layla's room, Karim helped her lie down on the bed, pulling the blankets up over her body. He sat on the edge, holding her hand, ensuring he wouldn't leave her alone. Gradually, Layla's breathing calmed and exhaustion overcame her. She fell asleep, spent but safe. Karim remained there for a long time, watching her sleep. The image of Samira smiling victoriously, the sadism in her eyes, the torn drawing, all of it burned in his mind. The resolve in his chest hardened. He wouldn't merely banish her from his home and his life. He would make her pay. The evidence was irrefutable, the cameras were silent witnesses, and his mother's pain was the most eloquent testimony. He picked up his phone, his fingers typing rapidly. The first call would be to his lawyer, the second, to the authorities. No one would make his mother suffer with impunity. The storm outside might have calmed, but the storm in his heart was just beginning to brew. This was only the beginning. Karim remained by the bedside, Layla's body rising and falling rhythmically beneath the blankets, the soft sound of her breathing, the only balm for his agitated soul. With each exhale, a fragment of the room's tension seemed to dissipate. He waited until the pale light of dawn began to peek through the curtains, painting the room in shades of grey and blue. Only then, certain that his mother was in a deep and safe sleep, did he rise with extreme care not to make a sound. The mansion's old floorboards creaked softly beneath his feet as he moved away from the room. The house's silence now a heavy shroud, brutally contrasting with the night's chaos. He made his way to his own suite, phone in hand. The resolve he felt was a cold, determined weight in his chest. The sound of digits being pressed filled the silence, each tone reverberating in his ears. The call to his lawyer, Ahmed, would be the first of many. The voice on the other end answered, sleepy at first, but quickly became alert upon hearing Karim's grave and urgent tone. "It's Emir Karim. I need you now, Ahmed. Not tomorrow now," Karim said, his voice devoid of emotion, yet laden with undeniable intensity. Ahmed, an experienced professional, quickly composed himself. "Emir, at this hour, has something serious happened?" "Serious is an understatement," Karim replied. Closing his eyes for an instant, the image of Layla's terrified face flashing in his mind. "Samira has been expelled from the property. I have just witnessed her cruelty against my mother. Psychological abuse, attempted destruction of her sanity, and destruction of personal property. I have everything recorded. My security cameras and, ironically, hers too." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, heavy with disbelief and the gravity of the news. Then Ahmed's voice returned, now fully professional. "Understood, Emir. This is shocking. But we have a basis, irrefutable evidence. We need to file for an immediate divorce, without concessions, and initiate criminal charges for abuse and cruelty. I will mobilize my team. You must be prepared to testify and provide the evidence. I want everything, Ahmed. I want her to lose every penny, every privilege. I want her to pay for every tear my mother shed. She will get nothing from my fortune. Karim's voice was sharp as a blade. Prepare the papers. I want this to be as swift and efficient as possible. It shall be done, Emir. I will start immediately. I will keep you updated every step of the way, and Layla's medical reports will be crucial for the abuse charges. Karim ended the call, the click of the phone sounding definitive. There was no time for rest, no room for the exhaustion he felt. The next step was equally crucial. He dialed again, this time the police emergency number. The operator's voice answered, calm and procedural. Emergency services, what's your emergency? I am reporting a severe case of domestic abuse and property destruction at my residence. Karim stated, each word heavy with truth. He provided the address, his name, and the essential details, not sparing Samira's cruelty. I have video evidence of everything that transpired. My wife, Samira, was the aggressor. My mother, Layla, the victim. She is traumatized and under my care. The operator assured him that a team would be dispatched immediately to investigate and collect evidence. The urgency in her voice was palpable. The response would be swift. With the calls made, Karim felt a slight tremor in his arms, a momentary release of the adrenaline that had propelled him. He looked out the window. The storm had completely moved away. The sky was beginning to lighten, a veil of purple and orange painting the horizon, promising dawn. Yet, the mansion remained plunged in an internal darkness, the atmosphere heavy with recent memories. He returned to the living room, his eyes falling on Karim's childhood drawing, torn and discarded on the floor, an inert piece of paper that carried Samira's violence. Near it, the broken camera, a tool of sadism now useless, lay like a monument to her own downfall. The scene was a vivid and painful reminder of what Layla had endured, and a catalyst for Karim's cold fury. He knelt and collected the pieces of the drawing, his hands trembling slightly. It wasn't just a drawing, it was a piece of his childhood, a link with his mother that Samira had tried to destroy. Guilt still gnawed at him, a slow poison that promised to corrode his peace. How could he have been so blind, so absent? A long sigh escaped his lips. Layla would need more than just a hug. She would need continuous care, therapy, an environment of absolute safety. Karim swore to himself that he would dedicate his life to this. The divorce, the accusations, the public exposure, all of it would be necessary for justice, but the true battle would be to heal his mother's invisible wounds. The sound of a car approaching the driveway, the crunch of tires on gravel, announced the arrival of the authorities. Karim stood up, his expression hardened. Dawn brought with it not the end, but the beginning of a new and arduous journey. The crunch of tires on the gravel driveway sounded sharp in the broken silence of dawn. Karim straightened his posture as an unmarked black car pulled up in front of the mansion, followed by a police cruiser. 3 men in dark uniforms stepped out, their strides firm and determined on the wet ground. One of them, a burly man with a serious demeanor, was the first to approach. Emir Karim, we're from the police. We were notified of a domestic abuse case, the officer said, his voice grave but calm. Karim nodded, his hand clenched into a fist at his side. That's me. Please, come in. The evidence is in the living room. He led them through the spacious hall, the echo of their shoes on the marble filling the space. Each step seemed to add a new weight to his chest. As they entered the living room, the officer's eyes swept the room, pausing on the torn drawing on the floor and the broken camera, an inert piece of metal and plastic now, near a disarranged armchair. My mother, Layla, was the victim. My wife, Samira, the aggressor. Karim declared, his voice glacial, devoid of any emotion. He pointed to the remnants of the drawing. "This is a drawing I made as a child. She forced her to destroy it, one of the many acts of cruelty she perpetrated." The burly officer, who introduced himself as Inspector Khalif, knelt to examine the drawing and the camera. A team photographer began to document the scene, the click of the camera reverberating in the room. Another officer took a small evidence bag, carefully collecting the fragments of paper. "Where is Mrs. Samira, Emir?" Khalif asked, standing and turning his attention to Karim. "My security team removed her from the property shortly after the incident. She is no longer here. I will not permit her to return," Karim replied, his voice laden with unwavering authority. "I have footage of everything. My security cameras recorded every moment of her cruelty, and ironically, her own camera, which she used to film my mother's suffering as well." Karim led them to his office, where the surveillance monitors still displayed the mansion's camera feeds. He played back the recordings from the previous night, from the moment Samira entered the room with Layla, to the climax of the torment and his own appearance at the door. The officers watched in heavy silence, their faces contorting in expressions of shock and revulsion. The sounds of the recording, Layla's suppressed sobs, Samira's cruel voice, the tearing of paper, filled the office, an undeniable testimony to the horror. "This is irrefutable, Emir," Inspector Khalif finally said, his voice a graver tone. "With this evidence, we can initiate criminal proceedings for psychological abuse, cruelty, and property destruction. Your mother will need to be evaluated by a forensic doctor to document the trauma." Karim clenched his fists. "I will do whatever it takes. My mother is traumatized. She has suffered from traumatic mutism since a previous accident. And the terror Samira inflicted has deepened it. She is sleeping now, but she will need intensive care and psychological support." "Understood. We will submit a detailed report. We will also request an immediate restraining order against Mrs. Samira to ensure she does not approach your mother or you," Khalif promised, as one of his subordinates began taking notes. "The case will be forwarded to the public prosecutor's office. It is likely she will be summoned to testify soon." As the officers continued to collect digital evidence, copying the recordings to their own devices, Karim felt a wave of tenuous relief mixed with overwhelming exhaustion. Justice was beginning to stir. He thought of Layla, sleeping in her room, her fragile figure finally safe. Her path to recovery would be long and arduous, but he was determined to walk every step by her side. Guilt still gnawed at him, an open wound, but the resolve to protect and heal her was a balm. Inspector Khalif finished dictating some final instructions to his men. "Emir, we will take the evidence and initiate proceedings. One of our detectives will stay in contact for further statements. For now, ensure your mother has all the necessary support." Karim escorted the officers to the door, the birdsong already announcing the morning outside, the sunlight tinting the sky with soft shades of pink and gold. The mansion, which for so many hours had been a stage of torment, now seemed to breathe cleaner air, though the shadows of the previous night still lingered. However, the calm was deceptive. The storm in his private life was just beginning. He knew Samira would not accept her downfall in silence. There would be retaliation, lies, manipulations, but he was ready. He would not back down. Karim closed the door behind the officers, the soft click echoing in the vastness of the house. The legal and emotional battle that lay ahead promised to be brutal, but his mother's safety and healing were his sole and unwavering priority. The birdsong already filled the air outside, the sunlight tinting the sky with soft shades of pink and gold, but inside, the mansion still held the echo of the night's violence. Yet, a cautious calm began to settle, a tenuous promise of healing. His steps led him directly to Layla's room. The door was ajar. He peeked in, finding his mother asleep, her soft, rhythmic breathing breaking the room's silence. The silk sheet covered her up to her neck, and the faint morning light filtering through the window painted her pale face with an almost ethereal glow. There was a slight tension in her expression, but not the terror he had witnessed hours earlier. A night nurse, whom Karim had hired after Layla's accident and who was on the property, but oblivious to the night's events, sat discreetly in an armchair in the corner, also asleep, a book in her lap. Karim approached the bed, his movements light so as not to disturb Layla's sleep. He knelt beside her, the weight of guilt still pressing on his chest. How could he have allowed such malice to flourish under his roof, under his own negligence? He touched his mother's hand, her skin soft and wrinkled beneath his fingers. He felt a surge of renewed determination. He would protect her. This time, he would be present, vigilant. A soft, melodic ring from his phone made him pull away. It was Ahmed. Karim left the room, carefully closing the door, and answered the call in the hallway. "Emir, I just spoke with Inspector Khalif. He confirmed that the evidence is overwhelming. Criminal proceedings will be initiated immediately. We have also already requested a temporary restraining order. It should be issued today." Ahmed's voice sounded urgent and purposeful. "Excellent. And what about the divorce? I want it to be relentless. No concessions." Karim replied, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep but firm. "We're already working on it. No concessions. She will not have access to anything that isn't legally hers, and we'll do our best to ensure it's the bare minimum. With the abuse and property destruction charges, her position is severely weakened. I'm also arranging a team of psychologists and doctors specializing in trauma for your mother. They can be there this afternoon, if convenient," Ahmed explained, his efficiency a balm for Karim's tormented soul. "Yes, this afternoon is perfect. The sooner the better, and ensure the mansion's security is reinforced. I don't want Samira anywhere near. Not even a letter, a message," Karim ordered, the image of Samira's victorious smile before the final terror still etched in his mind. "Understood, Emir. I'll make the calls right away. Prepare yourself, as the press will start reporting. The leak is inevitable, given the nature of the case," Ahmed warned. Karim hung up, the click filling the silence. The press. Samira wouldn't stay silent. She would try to distort the narrative, to tarnish his name. But he had the truth, and the recordings spoke louder than any lie. He felt a chill. The battle ahead would not only be in the courts, but also in the public sphere, a war of narratives. He returned to the living room, the morning sun flooding the room. The torn drawing was no longer there. The police had collected it as evidence. The broken camera had also disappeared. The space seemed clean, but the stain of Samira's cruelty remained invisible, impregnated in the house's walls. Karim walked to the window, watching the sunrise paint the sky with vibrant colors. The morning's peace brutally contrasted with the storm he knew was approaching. He was exhausted, but the exhaustion was tempered by an iron resolve. Layla's priority was unwavering. He would protect his mother, heal her wounds, and Samira would pay for every tear shed. The doorbell rang, an unexpected sound. Karim frowned, checking his watch. It was too early for the medical team. He headed to the main door, a strange premonition washing over him. As he opened it, an unexpected figure stood on the threshold, his face somber, his eyes fixed on Karim's. It was one of the estate's security guards, and in his hands, wrapped in a blanket, was a small, frightened Persian cat. "We found this kitten. It was at the entrance of the property, seems to have been abandoned. And we also found this," the security guard said, handing Karim an envelope with no sender, the paper thick and dark. Karim took the envelope, feeling the weight of the unknown. The cat meowed softly, its fragile sound in the vast morning silence. The unexpected presence of that small creature and the mysterious envelope added a new layer of uncertainty to the chaos already settling into his life. The storm seemed to have calmed, but new winds were beginning to blow. Karim felt the weight of the envelope in his hand, a strange sensation of metal and heavy paper. The kitten meowed again, a tiny, almost inaudible sound, and the security guard, noticing the emir's distraction, offered the small feline. "Would you like me to take him to the kitchen, sir? We can feed him." Karim nodded, still focused on the envelope. "Yes, please. Ensure he receives care." The security guard walked away with the cat, whose faint meows now sounded more like a distant whisper. Karim closed the main door, the soft click echoing in the vastness of the house, and walked to the living room, his eyes fixed on the dark envelope. The material was luxurious, which contrasted with the lack of a sender, suggesting a calculated, not impulsive origin. He tore open the seal with a sharp gesture, his fingertips feeling the paper's roughness, and pulled out the contents. It was a single sheet of paper, of the same quality as the envelope. The handwriting was elegant, flowing, and unmistakably Samira's. "Karim, do you think you've won? That some stupid cameras can erase years of history, of everything we built together? You're mistaken. Layla is a fraud, and you are blind. I know things that, if revealed, would make your empire tremble and your reputation crumble. Think carefully before you drag me through the mud. This is not a battle you want to fight in public. I loved you, and you betrayed me. Don't force me to show the world the man you truly are." Samira. A sound of repulsion escaped Karim's lips. The letter wasn't just a threat. It was a perverse distortion of reality. A desperate attempt to invert the narrative. She didn't deny the cruelty, only justified it with false accusations and blackmail. He crumpled the paper in his hand, feeling the heat of anger rise through his body. "Lies," he murmured, his voice harsh. "Pure and simple lies." Karim's phone rang again, interrupting his silent fury. It was Ahmed. "Emir, the first news reports are starting to circulate. Nothing detailed yet, just rumors about a family crisis involving you and Mrs. Samira. The public relations team is ready, but we need a clear strategy to handle the inevitable questions about the abuse allegations." "No strategy for lying, Ahmed. The truth is our strategy," Karim replied, his voice laden with cold determination. "I will not yield to blackmail. Samira wants to drag me through the mud. Let her try. I have the evidence. I don't care about the press or what she says. My sole priority is Layla's safety and recovery." He paused, taking a deep breath. "And by the way, I just received a letter from her, a series of veiled threats and unfounded accusations about secrets that would destroy my empire." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "Understood, Emir. This is exactly what I expected. She will try to discredit you and manipulate public opinion. We will prepare a statement that reaffirms your position, your concern for your mother's health, and the seriousness of the accusations. We will not stoop to her level. The temporary restraining order has been issued. She cannot approach the property." "Good. And reinforce security, Ahmed. I don't want anything from her to come near my mother, not even a breath of her toxic presence," Karim ordered, his eyes scanning the room's walls, as if he could see the shadows of the past. "I'm already arranging that. The team of psychologists and doctors will be at the mansion in about an hour. They will contact you when they reach the gate. And regarding the divorce, our lawyers are working to ensure she gets nothing beyond the legal minimum, given the circumstances. This letter and the threats will only strengthen our position in court." Karim hung up, the dry click ending the conversation. The morning sunlight now completely flooded the room, but it couldn't dissipate the shadow Samira's letter had cast. He folded the letter and put it in his jacket pocket, feeling the paper's warmth against his skin. It was a physical reminder that Samira would not disappear quietly. She would fight, with every weapon at her disposal. Lies, blackmail, manipulation of public opinion. But Karim also had his weapons: the truth, irrefutable evidence, and a new, unwavering determination. He was no longer the absent, blind magnate. He was a son, a protector, and a man who had been awakened to the cruelty that had hidden beneath his own roof. He felt a slight tremor in his pocket. The small Persian cat, which the security guard had left in the room before taking it to the kitchen, had crept up and was rubbing against his leg, meowing softly. Karim bent down, picking it up. The kitten was a tangle of soft fur and fear, its large green eyes fixed on him. "You're a survivor, aren't you?" Karim whispered to the cat, stroking its head. The animal purred in response, the sound vibrating against his chest. It was a reminder of life's fragility, of the innocence that needed protection, and of the resilience that emerged even in the darkest circumstances. The doorbell rang again, this time a predictable sound. The medical team had arrived. Karim took a deep breath, feeling a breath of hope. Layla's journey to healing would begin now, and he would be there to guide her. Samira's storm was just beginning, but Karim was ready to face it, with truth as his shield and his love for his mother as his compass. The battle would be fierce, but he knew he had to win. Karim opened the door to the group of professionals. A woman with dark hair and kind eyes, Dr. Elena Rossi, smiled gently. "Emir Karim, I am Dr. Rossi, the head of the trauma team. These are Dr. Malik, a psychiatrist, and Ms. Chen, an occupational therapist." Her voice was calm and professional, a balm in the charged atmosphere. Karim nodded, stepping aside. "Please come in. My mother is in the living room." He led them to Layla, who was sitting on the sofa, a blanket over her knees, her gaze fixed on some distant point. The morning light highlighted the fragility of her face. Dr. Rossi approached with slow, deliberate steps, sitting on the opposite sofa. "Hello, Layla. My name is Elena. We are here to help you. You don't need to say anything, just listen to us if you feel comfortable." Her voice was soft as a whisper, and Layla raised her eyes for an instant, a flicker of curiosity or fear passing through them, before returning to her fixed gaze. As the team began their assessment, with an almost reverent gentleness, Karim observed from a distance, feeling a pang of hope for the first time in days. Dr. Malik asked Karim some questions about Layla's history, the nature of her accident and recent events. Karim described the traumatic mutism, the silent sorrow that consumed his mother, and Samira's cruelty. His voice choked with emotion as he recounted the destruction of property. A soft meow filled the momentary silence in the room. The small Persian cat, which the security guard had brought earlier, had escaped from the kitchen and crept into the living room. It walked with hesitant steps, its furry tail swaying gently, and jumped onto the sofa beside Layla. The animal snuggled close to her, meowing again, a tiny, almost inaudible sound. Layla, to everyone's surprise, turned her head and looked at the kitten. Her fingers extended slowly, trembling slightly, and she stroked it. The cat purred, a vibrant sound that broke the stillness, and Layla made an almost imperceptible movement with her lips, a remnant of a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Dr. Rossi exchanged a meaningful look with Karim. "It seems we have a little therapy assistant here," she murmured, a genuine smile on her face. Interaction with animals can be incredibly beneficial in cases of trauma. Karim's phone vibrated in his pocket, pulling him from his observation. It was Ahmed. "Emir, the press is in a frenzy. Al Sahara News has published a front-page story about the shocking separation and rumors of a family scandal. We already have a statement ready, focusing on your concern for your mother's health and your decision to protect your family from toxic elements. We haven't mentioned Samira directly yet, but it's implied." "Good. Stick to the truth, Ahmed. I don't want her lies to gain traction. And security? Karim replied, his voice lower so as not to disturb Layla's session. Reinforced, the estate's security team is on high alert. No unverified correspondence will be permitted. No one, except authorized professionals, will have access to the mansion, Ahmed assured him. Karim hung up, the click almost inaudible amidst the cat's purring and the doctor's soft voices. The news from the press didn't shake him as he expected. His focus was on Layla, on the small hand that now stroked the kitten's soft fur. The tenuous smile he had glimpsed on his mother's lips, even if fleeting, was a sign, a promise. He knew the war with Samira would intensify in the public sphere. She would do everything to drag him down, to tarnish his name with the lies contained in that letter. But he had an unwavering purpose. Layla was his compass, his reason. He approached the sofa, sitting in a nearby armchair. The kitten, sensing his presence, meowed again, and Layla raised her eyes to Karim. For a brief instant, their eyes met, and Karim saw in them not just pain, but also a tenuous thread of connection, of recognition. The journey would be long and arduous for both Layla and him, but with the medical team by his side, the small feline bringing a touch of innocence and his own unwavering determination, Karim felt a new strength grow within him. The darkness seemed to begin to recede, and a light, however faint, began to illuminate the path. Layla's tenuous smile, just a glimpse on her lips, was like a sunbeam breaking through the dark clouds that had long hovered over the mansion. The small Persian cat nestled in her lap, purring softly, a constant and soothing sound that seemed to calm Layla's inner storm. Her fingers, once trembling, now stroked the animal's soft fur with increasing gentleness. Dr. Rossi, with a look of approval, observed the scene. "It's remarkable. The cat's presence seems to have an immediate stabilizing effect," she commented, her voice low and gentle. Dr. Malik made notes on his clipboard, while Ms. Chen, the occupational therapist, was already thinking about how to integrate this interaction into Layla's routine. Karim felt a little lighter. The scene before him was a stark contrast to the images of Layla in suffering that haunted him. He moved a little closer to the sofa. "She hasn't interacted like this with anything, not even with the security guard who brought her," he said, his voice choked with an emotion he could barely contain. "Trauma can create complex barriers," Dr. Rossi explained. "Sometimes a non-verbal connection with an animal, for example, can be the first step to breaking through isolation. It's an encouraging sign, Emir." As the team continued to observe Layla, asking Karim discreet questions about her habits and preferences before the accident, a distant hum began to fill the mansion's air. Karim recognized the sound of helicopters, a sound that in normal circumstances would be a prelude to the arrival of important guests or his own departure. Now, it was the echo of intrusion, a sign that Samira had already mobilized her forces. Karim's phone vibrated in his pocket again. It was Ahmed. "Emir, the situation has escalated. Samira has obtained a temporary injunction from a compliant judge, claiming you are preventing her from seeing Layla and are holding her captive. She is using the media to create a narrative of kidnapping and abuse of power. She is coming to the mansion now, with a team of lawyers and reporters." A guttural sound of rage escaped Karim. "This is insane. She has no access to Layla. She is the cause of all this." "We know, Emir," Ahmed replied, his voice tense. "Our lawyers are on their way to contest the injunction, but she's already here. The security cameras just registered her arrival at the main gate. She's forcing her way in." A shrill scream from Samira could be heard in the distance, coming from somewhere outside the mansion, followed by a cacophony of voices and camera clicks. The sound was distant, yet unmistakable, penetrating the house's walls. The cat's purrs ceased abruptly. Layla, who had been focused on the animal, raised her head, her eyes wide, the glimmer of recognition vanishing, replaced by a familiar terror. She began to tremble, her fingers twitching. The cat, startled, jumped from her lap and scurried under a table. "No, no, please," Karim murmured, trying to calm his mother. He held her hands, which now trembled uncontrollably. Dr. Rossi and Dr. Malik exchanged worried glances. Ms. Chen tried to intervene, speaking in a soft tone, but Layla's panic had already set in. The sound of heavy pounding on the front door reverberated throughout the mansion, making the walls vibrate. A shrill, unmistakable voice screamed Karim's name. "Karim, I know you're in there. You can't hide the truth forever. I'm going to free your mother from her prison." The terror in Layla's eyes was palpable. She cowered on the sofa, her arms wrapped around her body, as if trying to protect herself from an invisible attack. The attempt at a word on her lips transformed into a muffled whimper, a distressing sound that tore through the room's silence. Karim felt the cold, controlled rage burn in his chest. He looked at his mother's terrified face, her newfound fragility crushed by Samira's relentless cruelty. The war had become too personal, too invasive. He could no longer afford to wait. "Doctors, please stay with Layla," Karim said, his voice low and firm, laden with a grim determination. "I will handle this. I will not allow her to cause my mother another second of suffering." He stood, his eyes fixed on the door from which the sounds of Samira's invasion echoed. Every fiber of his being cried out to protect Layla. The truth, which he had intended to reveal gradually, would now be exposed with the force of a hurricane. It was time for Samira to face the consequences of her actions, not just in the courts, but before the world. And he would be responsible for ensuring that every one of her lies was unmasked. Karim's hand clenched into a tight fist. The peace that had begun to blossom in Layla had been brutally interrupted, and he would not forgive Samira for it. Karim strode down the corridor with firm steps, the sound of his shoes echoing on the mansion's polished marble. With each stride, the cacophony of Samira's invasion intensified, dragging him into the storm she had deliberately orchestrated. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks in the entrance hall, followed by shouts from journalists eager for a headline, and Samira's penetrating voice demanding entry, pounding on the doors. Ms. Chen and the doctors hurried to close Layla's room door, trying to shield her from the tumult, while the mansion's security guard tried to contain the crowd already spreading through the hall. Upon reaching the epicenter of the chaos, Karim was met with a theatrical scene. The mansion's grand oak gate was forced open, flung wide, and Samira burst inside, surrounded by a pack of lawyers and reporters, their cameras ever ready. Her eyes, once filled with victorious terror, now gleamed with ostentatious fury, a spectacle staged for curious lenses. She wore an impeccable ensemble, a shocking contrast to the victim image she tried to project. A wireless microphone was clipped to her lapel, and she spoke in an overly dramatic tone, gesturing towards the mansion as if it were a fortress of evil. "He's holding my mother-in-law hostage, my poor Layla in captivity, prevented from seeing me. This is an unprecedented abuse of power." Her voice was histrionic, calculated to resonate with moral outrage. Camera flashes fired non-stop, painting the hall with explosions of white light. Reporters shouted questions, their voices blending into a deafening din, each seeking the perfect soundbite for the live broadcast. Karim stopped a few meters from her, his expression impassive, but his eyes burned with contained fury. He didn't say a word, letting her performance reach its climax. When Samira paused for another dramatic flourish, Karim stepped forward. "Enough, Samira." His voice was a dangerously calm whisper, yet it cut through the noise like a sharp blade. Samira turned to him, an arrogant smile playing on her lips. "Ah, the magnate finally deigns to appear. Have you come to prevent me from embracing my dear Layla?" She extended her arms in a forced gesture of affection, projecting the image of a concerned daughter-in-law for the cameras that followed her. Karim didn't flinch. He raised his hand, and one of the security guards, who was already in position, activated a large flat-screen monitor hidden behind a wooden panel in the hall. The screen glowed with a cold light, and immediately a raw, unedited image filled the space. It was the mansion's living room, but not as it was now. It was the image of Layla, huddled, her eyes tear-filled, her trembling hands tearing Karim's childhood drawing. The sound of paper ripping was amplified, reverberating through the hall. The reporters, previously frantic, fell silent abruptly, their cameras still firing, but now focused on the screen. The image from Samira's camera, a victorious and cruel smile plastered on her face as she filmed Layla's suffering, appeared next. The shock was palpable. The silence that followed was broken only by the frantic clicking of cameras and the sound of the video, which narrated Samira's own cruelty. Karim seized the widespread shock. "Here is the dear Layla Samira so yearns to see," he said, his voice gaining strength, projecting over the stunned silence. "This is the truth behind her narrative of kidnapping and abuse. My mother, traumatized and mute after an accident, being forced to destroy her own son's memories. This is the kind of care my wife offered her." He looked directly at the cameras, at the entire world. "The cameras don't lie. Our evidence is undeniable. Samira not only tormented my mother, she made sure to record every moment of her cruelty for her own sadistic pleasure. This was just one of many acts. We have hours of footage." A low hum of conversation erupted among the journalists, but it was a sound of shock and revelation, not of doubt. The headline of the virtuous woman crumbled before their eyes. "Samira will be prosecuted not only for defamation, but for abuse and cruelty," Karim continued, his glacial gaze fixed on her. "My legal team is already on site and will present all evidence to the court. Your charade is over." One of Karim's lawyers stepped forward, handing Samira a stack of documents. "These are the divorce papers and a restraining order. You are no longer permitted to approach Layla, nor any property of Emir Karim." Samira took the papers with trembling hands, her face contorted with rage and despair. She shot Karim a murderous glare, but the force of her fury was broken. The spectacle she had planned had spectacularly turned against her. The reporters, smelling blood, swarmed her, bombarding her with questions they had previously directed at Karim. Her victorious song had turned into a public lament. Karim felt a pang of cold satisfaction. Layla's peace had been brutally interrupted, but the truth had finally found its way to light. It was the first step towards her redemption. He turned and walked back to Layla's room, leaving Samira to the mercy of the wolves she herself had summoned. The sound of cameras and excited voices filled the hall, a testament to the end of a reign of terror and the beginning of a new battle. Karim walked away from the epicenter of chaos in the hall. The cacophony of flashes and excited voices, though still perceptible, began to diminish as he moved away from the scene. He heard the urgent questions fired at Samira, her own desperate retorts, and the muffled, shocked murmurs of her lawyers. Layla's room door was only ajar. He opened it silently and entered. The room's interior was a refuge of tense calm. Dr. Rossi and Dr. Malik sat near Layla on the sofa, Ms. Chen beside them, all with expressions of deep concern. Layla was huddled, her eyes fixed on the door, still trembling slightly. She looked like a frightened child, her hands clenched. The cat, previously startled, now watched the scene from under the table, its golden eyes gleaming in the dim light. Karim closed the door with a soft click, sealing the noisy exterior out. The sound was small, but it made Layla flinch. He approached the sofa, kneeling before her. "Mother," he said, his voice low and full of tenderness. "She's gone. She can't hurt you anymore. No one will hurt you again." Layla raised her gaze to him. Her eyes still carried the shadow of terror, but there was also a question, a need for understanding that hadn't been there before. She watched Karim's face, searching for something, perhaps confirmation or solace. "She's gone, Layla." "Doctor." Rossi intervened gently, her voice calm and reassuring. "Karim protected you. She cannot return." Dr. Malik nodded, and Ms. Chen offered Layla a glass of water, which she accepted with still unsteady hands. The doctor's gazes were of relief and gratitude towards Karim, but also of caution. The violent interruption of Layla's peace was a setback, but Karim's resolve was undeniable. Karim held his mother's hand, his large fingers enveloping hers. He felt her skin cold and damp, but the trembling seemed to lessen. A deep sigh escaped Layla's lips, a sound that wasn't of pain, but of overwhelming exhaustion. Her eyes closed for an instant, and when she opened them again, the tension in her body seemed to have relaxed somewhat. Outside, the sounds of agitation diminished, transforming into a distant hum, as if the storm were moving away. Karim knew that Samira was now facing the scrutiny she had so desired for him. The truth, broadcast in real time, had been a devastating blow. Karim's lawyers would already be working to ensure she had no legal escape, that every accusation of cruelty and defamation was supported by irrefutable evidence. He felt a weight lift from his shoulders, but the battle was far from over. Layla's recovery was the utmost priority. "We need to ensure she feels completely safe again," Karim said to the doctors, without averting his gaze from Layla. "That there is no longer any shadow of Samira in her mind." Dr. Rossi nodded. "We need to rebuild trust, Amir. It will be a delicate process. But what you did today was crucial. The public exposure of the truth, the shattering of Samira's facade. That can be a relief, despite the initial shock." Layla moved her head slowly, her eyes meeting Karim's. A tear rolled down her pale face, but it wasn't a tear of terror. It was different, softer, perhaps of relief, or a deep sadness that was beginning to find a way out. She squeezed Karim's hand, a weak but deliberate gesture. The cat, as if sensing the shift in energy in the room, slid from under the table and approached the sofa, meowing softly. Layla watched it for a moment, and an almost imperceptible micro-smile touched her lips. It was a beginning. Karim knew Layla's journey would still be long, but he was determined to be by her side every step of the way. The mansion, once a stage of secrets and torments, would now be a sanctuary. He would do everything to erase the shadows Samira had cast over his mother's life. Justice would be relentless, and peace, finally, would be restored. The challenge now was to ensure Layla's recovery was complete and that her emotional wounds began to heal. And for Samira, the outside world, which she so wanted to impress, would become her cruelest judge. The reign of terror had ended, but the rebuilding of Layla's life was just beginning. The distant hum of the storm outside was almost inaudible inside Layla's room, which now transformed into a refuge of quietude. Karim remained kneeling, holding his mother's hand, the connection between them a silent, unbreakable bond. Dr. Rossi's and Dr. Malik's gazes softened at the scene, a mixture of hope and veiled professionalism. Ms. Chen, with visible relief, withdrew to the kitchen to prepare a calming tea, while the cat, completely at ease, nestled at Layla's feet, emitting a soft purr that filled the air. Layla, though still fragile, seemed to absorb the calm emanating from Karim. The tear that rolled down her face was now followed by another and then another, but these were not the paralyzing tears of terror. They were tears that washed away the pain, that seemed to release the accumulated weight of months of torment. She watched Karim, her once opaque blue eyes now holding a sparkle of recognition and gratitude. She squeezed his hand again, this time with a little more strength, a gesture that spoke volumes without the need for words. "It's a good sign, Emir," Dr. Rossi whispered. "It's release, a crucial step." Karim nodded, without averting his gaze from his mother. The sensation of her squeeze in his hand was a balm for his soul. He noticed a subtle movement in Layla's lips, as if she were trying to form a word, a sound. He waited, his heart pounding in his chest. Time seemed to stop. Layla's eyes fixed on his, a visible effort on her face. Then a hoarse, faint sound escaped her throat. It wasn't a clear word, but a moan, a guttural sound of pain and, perhaps, of primordial relief. Karim leaned closer, his eyes welling up. "It's all right, Mother. You don't need to say anything. I'm here." Layla shook her head slowly, her eyes still fixed on his. She made another effort, and this time the sound was a little more distinct. A whisper, almost a scratch, but unmistakable. "Ka-kar-im." The sound of Layla's own voice, even if broken and faint, echoed in the room like a crystal bell. Karim closed his eyes for an instant, feeling emotion overflow. He opened his eyes again, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "Yes, Mother, it's me." Dr. Rossi and Dr. Malik exchanged a look of silent triumph. The cat meowed again, as if celebrating the small victory. Layla took a deep breath, looking exhausted, but a serenity never before seen settled on her features. The trauma was still there, but the silence that had imprisoned her had been broken. It was a beginning. Outside, the media's fury against Samira intensified. Headlines already being rewritten in real time. Karim's lawyers had already filed legal actions, the overwhelming evidence ensuring that Samira's downfall would be as public and relentless as her cruelty. The footage, irrefutable proof of her actions, would be presented in all courts and news channels. Her life of luxury and schemes was crumbling. The empire of her facade had collapsed. But inside the mansion, Karim no longer thought of Samira. His focus was entirely on Layla. "We need a specialized therapy team, Dr. Rossi," he said, his voice firm, yet full of tenderness. "The best money can buy, and peace, much peace." Dr. Rossi nodded. "Exactly. The safe environment and your support are fundamental. What happened today, the breaking of the silence, is a miracle, Emir. A true breakthrough." Karim kissed his mother's forehead. "You will recover, Mother. I promise. This mansion will be your sanctuary, and no one will ever hurt you again." Layla closed her eyes, a faint smile playing on her lips. The sound of her name, coming from her own voice, however weak, was the sweetest melody Karim had ever heard. The journey of healing would be long and difficult, but the darkness had been dispelled. Hope had returned, and the mansion, finally, would be filled not by the echo of torment, but by the promise of a new beginning, where love and peace would reign.